Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Carr Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'll be joined by ESPN's Tim McManus as we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles as I continue my little NFC East preview to get you ready for training camp. What did the Eagles go through? But also, I asked him about Brian Johnson, who joined, of course, the Commander's staff. Kind of thrown under the bus in Philly. Was it justified? I think you'll like Tim's answer. So anyways, we talk about Brian Johnson for a few minutes. So stay tuned for that. One or two little quick things before I get to my conversation with Tim. And I am technically still on vacation, so I'm not doing a lot of digging on a lot of stuff. The whole Brandon Ayuk and Jaden Daniels and the playbook thing, it'll get asked later. I haven't talked to anybody about that because I have been on vacation and my vacations have been spoiled for about 5 or 6 years. And I'm not going to let anything here spoil anything this summer. So, but we'll get into that more later. But the other thing is today, before I recorded this, we saw that the Commanders tweeted out a picture with uniforms with gold pants, and that is a very good move, as I think you know. And for the reasons why we all know it's a good move, because it's a nod to the past. And I've definitely talked to people here about how they understand that one of the things they could do possibly is go back to the former look. Not going to go use the logo, not using the name, but the former look. And that would at least make it feel like when you're watching them on the field, whatever you're calling them, they look like the team that you grew up rooting for. And I grew up an Indians fan. I've told you this. They switched to Guardians. You know, trust me when I say it's not like people have embraced that name, but they're showing up. And they're showing up because they're winning, but also because they didn't make it look like they were a new team, a new franchise. And with this one, it felt like they not only changed the name, but they changed the look and the feel of the team. So going back to the gold pants is a good first step. This group is well aware of the history of the franchise. And I mean, we all know that. And I think the importance of that and the importance of the look and what matters to fans. Now, they're not going to just listen to everything and just say, okay, you guys want this, we're going to do this. But I think in some cases where it can be done, they will listen. And this is one of them. So I don't know that this is the final step for this. It wouldn't shock me if in a year or so that, maybe they do something more with the look. I don't know, but I do know, I can talk to some people here that they understand that the look was changed maybe a little bit too much. And, for God's sake, do away with the Arizona Cardinals home uniforms here. That's not a good look. Anyways, so the gold pants, good development. We'll see where it goes from there. Anyway, that's it for me, folks. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Tim McManus. Will Jaden Daniels climb to the top of the NFC East? Will the Commanders zip past the competition? We'll have to wait until the season starts to see, but you can get a head start on the competition this summer at the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring. Named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today, the country's largest ropes course and zipline park is now open 7 days a week. Located in the heart of Montgomery County, Maryland, the Adventure Park offers climbing, ziplining, axe throwing, food, and more. Experience adventure day or night with your family, or leave the kids at home for one of the exclusive Keep It Lit adult-only events. These summer date nights are perfect, featuring glow lights, music, fire pits, and endless adventure. With challenges anywhere from beginner to expert, there is something for all skill levels. Not looking to scramble through the trees? Keep your feet planted in the pocket and throw a perfect spiral at axe throwing. You can throw at traditional targets or play any number of interactive games. You can even upload your own image. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. The best climbing, ziplining, and axe throwing in the country right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Kime. All right, Tim, so the Eagles, a little bit of a slide at the end of last season. How different is this organization now, and how much, what they did in this offseason was kind of fueled by that? I think, was it like a 1-6 finish? How much of it was fueled by that?
Yeah, 1-6 finish, collapse of kind of epic proportions around here. And there were changes as a result of it. Coach Nick Sirianni's job was in question, at least a little bit publicly, whether he would be able to survive that, and he did. But his two top lieutenants did not. So Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, ended up getting fired, and so did Sean Desai, who was replaced by Matt Patricia, and Patricia also got fired. And so it's a clean slate that way. They bring in kind of the old sage veteran defensive coordinator and Vic Fangio, a guy that they wanted last year. And then they brought in Kellen Moore. Of course, he was with the Cowboys and then with the Chargers. And he's got a pretty good resume there. And so they feel like they've bolstered and kind of upgraded at the respective coordinator positions, and are hoping that helps kind of stem the tide from what happened last year and gets them back on a good track.
So before I get to some other stuff, obviously Brian Johnson ends up here as a pass game coordinator. How much do you put on his shoulders as far as what happened with them last year?
Not a ton. And I know that'll be argued by some people in the market for sure. But my understanding of it is that he was just kind of in a bad spot, John, where he had to deal with kind of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni's respective visions, and none of those things meshed. And so I guess that, he obviously as the OC, he has to take some of the responsibility, but it felt like, and Sirianni had long said that this is my offense. And it felt like Johnson had to fit within the confines of that offense, while also trying to make sure that everybody's happy. The quarterback's happy, the head coach is happy, all the different people. And so I don't think we really saw the full vision if he would have had autonomy. It was just a bad spot for him. And so I do feel like, and he was like a highly respected guy within the organization up until very recently. And they thought that he was on a great trajectory. We know that around the league, he had a ton of interest, including, some head coaching vacancies that he was, getting looked at for. So I wouldn't put that last year and be like, okay, now, Johnson isn't, a guy who has, real high upside here. I believe that still exists. And obviously when you have a collapse like that, somebody's got to go. He was the guy that went. It's really tough to bounce from that to like a head coaching job. Right. So he's got to take something in between. But I do believe ultimately he'll be an asset for Washington.
Before that collapse, why was he held in high regard? What was it about him that they really liked, do you think?
I think it was his offensive mind. I know there's a lot of people, in league circles and in the college ranks before that, where he came from, that just felt like he was, a super smart, like always like the young coach, like on the climb, was able to like get Dak Prescott as an example. He worked with him on the college level, and he got a lot of credit for helping develop Dak into what he became on the NFL level. He had Kyle Trask at Florida and had Trask playing out of his mind. And so he's really good with quarterbacks. I think he's really sharp. He was able to get some play calling experience on the college level. And just about, the reputation was just very strong as like a quarterback developer, bright offensive mind who has the potential to be head coach in the league.
How much heat will there be on Sirianni this year going into the season?
The most that you can have. I feel like it's Philly, number one. And he's coming off of the collapse. He's got what looks like a really talented roster. And once both of the coordinators go, there's really nowhere else to turn to except for the head coach. And so I would say that he's absolutely on the hot seat. The bar's really high. So it's hard to be like, all right, well, where's that marker for where he has to get to in order to retain his job? but we know that the expectations are really high in Philly right now, and that playoffs is like the bare minimum. And winning games is going to have to be a priority for Sirianni in order to guarantee that he's going to keep his job. But yeah, it's pretty hot right now, I would say.
And it's funny because that organization, when you look at the moves, I mean, if it pays off, they could be really good. And how do you see the floor and then the ceiling for what they did in the offseason? And plus, you combine like Howie and Sirianni, it seems like there's always a lot of heat, but always maybe a lot of ability to go pretty high.
Yeah, so I feel like I can't remember a season that had this much boom or bust to it, right? It can go because of the talent that you're talking about with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and a solid offensive line and what looks like an improved defense, that they could be an NFC contender, and they could very well make a run in the postseason. And the other side is that there's a bit of combustibility to this thing because they are coming off of the collapse, because the visions of Hurts and Sirianni did not mesh last year. And because when they got hit with adversity, they kind of crumbled last season, and many of the returning parts are there. And so they get hit with adversity again. What does it look like as they're trying to navigate a new offense and a new defense? So it has the potential to completely implode, and it also has the potential to be like a team that flirts with, a Super Bowl appearance. So, this is one of the more fascinating seasons that I have ever covered. It hasn't even started yet. And I just know that it's one that's going to be filled with intrigue that has potential for like glory for them and also disaster.
Well, the good thing is the Philly fans will probably be very calm throughout this process.
Oh yeah, steady hands, middle of the road, always.
There is, and this is a little side, but there's nothing I enjoy more than Philly talk radio after a game. Like there was a Monday night game a couple years ago, I think, or a night game where I can't remember what it was, but the fans were just livid, and it's like they're 7-1, but like they need to blitz more. Anyways, it's always entertaining. But with going back to like what they've done, I mean, they've also lost some pretty strong people from that roster, including like Jason Kelce. I mean, how much will those losses maybe impact on the field in the locker room?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, Jason Kelce's an all-timer. There's no replacing him. He's been huge in the way that offense functions. So not just like there's on the field and his physical abilities, the vision that people have of Kelce is getting downfield and is just able to create in ways that other offensive linemen are not able to. There's also the cerebral side where it was basically him and the offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland, that would kind of run those meetings and design, the run game and a lot of the parts on offense. And he was also critical for every quarterback that he's worked with to identify blitz pre-snap. There's really nobody in the history of the league that's done it better than Jason Kelce. And so now you're bringing in Cam Jurgens, a former second-round pick who was essentially handpicked by the organization, and Kelce to be his heir apparent. They feel really good about him, but it's just like he can't be Kelce. So what's the degree of drop-off? I think we're going to find out there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Fletcher Cox retired as well. And, he's one of the best players on defense in a pretty storied franchise history. And they also lost Hassan Reddick. They decided not to pay him, and they traded him to the Jets. And so if somebody would have asked me like who were the top players on defense last year, and it wasn't a very good defensive performance overall, but the top guys, Fletcher Cox was definitely one of them. And Reddick was probably also in the top three. It's probably those two and Darius Slay are probably the top three guys. Slay returns, he's north of 30 years old. And that's all to say that there's questions as to who's going to pick up the slack on that defensive side, or really on both sides for Kelce and then for those two guys. And so, yeah, I mean, two major pillars of the organization and Cox and Kelce are gone, and it's to be determined how that shakes out both on the field and in the locker room.
So you wrote about this recently, but the changes on offense with Kellen Moore, but there's also, Barkley joining it, and it's probably a pivotal year for Hurts. I mean, he's obviously been very good, but there's still some questions about maybe some passing ability, right? So like what are some of the changes that you're looking to see on this offense and how can it help what they want to do?
Yeah, so I think that the offense just generally got stagnant last year, and part of that was, and Chip Kelly went through this as well, as he kind of went on in his head coaching career in Philly, where it started out just really well and it was new and fresh and innovative, and then defenses started to catch up to that, and Sirianni's counterpunch just was lacking. I feel like offensively the idea was just let's stay on that same path because it worked before, and defenses had caught up. And so that goes to Kellen Moore to add some wrinkles. And he already has, like you can see just by watching minicamp practice, like there's a lot more motion. The Eagles were dead last in motion last season. He's going to add some more of that. There'll probably be more Hurts under center. I think you're going to see more quick game to enhance and maximize the talent that is around Hurts. And so that's some of the ways that they're going to hope to improve it.
What about with Barkley? What do they, I mean, we've saw him with the Giants, so we know what he can do, but what do you feel he can add to this offense? And that's a lot of talent on that offense. Yeah,
it's a really interesting move by an organization that doesn't usually pay its running backs.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of counter to what we've come to believe from this analytically run front office that doesn't put a whole lot of weight in having, a big piece of the financial pie in the running back. But here they bring in Barkley, and they believe he's going to be a 3-down back who can be a good pass catcher for them, pass protector for them, and then, of course, run the football. But it's year 7 for him. There's an injury history there. There's not a whole lot of depth. And I could say that for several positions, John. There's a star power and then not a whole lot of depth behind it. And so that's going to be – there's a lot of eggs essentially in the basket of Saquon Barkley. But they believe that he's going to be – obviously an intricate part of what they do offensively. But one of the things that's really interesting to me is how Moore is going to divvy that up to make sure that all of those star players are happy. And while they might say that's a good problem to have, we know that A.J. Brown in the past is like, if he's not getting the ball, he'll feel a certain way. It's very natural for these like top end playmakers to feel that way. And so they have to make sure they feed him and feed Barkley and feed Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. And it's really, that's one of the questions going in for me is, can they do that effectively while keeping everybody kind of invested?
On the other side, defense is, again, seems to have been remade now, and secondary remade. Fangio coming in. How different is this defense? What are some of the, between, Cooper DeJean, Gardner Johnson coming back? Like, what do you think are the key moves, and how different could this defense look under Fangio?
Yeah, well, so they were second to last. I think it was just Washington when it came to pass defense last year. They had given up 35 touchdowns, and they were second to last in passing yards allowed, and that was clearly the Achilles heel of this defense. And so they had addressed that by bringing back Gardner Johnson, as you say, and then they spent their first 2 picks in April's draft on defensive backs. They brought in Quinion Mitchell with a first-round pick cornerback, and then Cooper DeJean, who can play a little bit of slot corner and then safety if you need him to. So those guys will be in the mix. James Bradbury was an All-Pro 2 years ago. He was a problem last year. His play really fell off, and so I think you're going to see somebody new in that spot, whether it's Quinion Mitchell or someone of that ilk. Maybe it's Cooper DeJean, maybe one of the Keely Ringo, second-year guy who really improved last year. So I think that you're going to see some fresh kind of younger guys in the secondary to enhance the speed and athleticism. And then because of the loss of Cox and Reddick, it really comes down to Bryce Huff, who they brought in free agency from the Jets, and then their first round pick from a year ago in Jalen Carter to kind of pick up the mantle there and be the productive leaders for this team. I mean, this is like it's squarely on, in my mind, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, a fellow first-round pick out of Georgia, to kind of elevate their game to make sure what's usually like an historically good defensive front, make sure it stays that way so the rest of the unit can function.
Very last thing, what do you think the perception is of Washington there after their offseason? Obviously, there's a ways to go here, and there still seems to be a gap. And I had Jordan on recently, and we always feel like we're the stepchildren of the NFC East. But have you heard anything about what they thought of Washington's offseason or anything like that?
I feel like once you get a quarterback, then that changes the trajectory and the dynamic. And we all saw last year with CJ Stroud,
right?
The way that Houston went. I mean, that's the exception to the rule. I think everybody understands that, but the possibility is there for a quick ascension. And so I believe that's the way that they're viewed. Like the change in ownership has altered the perception, I think, league wide of the franchise. Not that they're going to come right back in this season and be dynamos, but that they have the chance for the first time in a really long time to be a well-run organization that can eventually pose a threat. And it seems like, they had a solid draft and made some decent moves this offseason. So even though they're probably not ready for prime time, I think that the view is around here that they're not going to be the pushover that they have been in years past.
Tim, appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Tim for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode, so I'll talk to you next time.